All right, Investor Central. This is Eric here with STAX AI. And what I wanted to do today was go over our monthly back testing just to give you guys an idea of some updates and what's going on with the numbers. What I've got first for you guys here is, we've got a few little things that I've been requested for. For example, our new updates here will also include the number of days to the highs of those option prints. And as well, you will also be able to see the average number of days till those highs as well. The first page that you guys see here is an updated check for April. What we do have is a update that was released in the late days of March. So actually these prints will end here on the 20th here. All right. I do also have the additional new format and the new interface that we will go over in the second part of this video as well. But what I want to let you guys know here is if you take a look through all of our numbers, we've got some pretty awesome hits. INVZ with 384%, AXP 569, Airbnb 251. If you notice right here, if they're in green, that means that up through April 5th, there was actually an updated day or an updated print of a high that these have actually achieved. And if you take a look at these, we do have these prints that were from October and November. Unfortunately for you guys, you did not receive stacks or had the opportunity to see these prints until December. But this is for our back testing purposes, everything up from the end of October through November. What you'll see here is basically there's only one main miss. A lot of these actually have had some pretty awesome returns you may see in the hundreds, or if not more. One in particular here, this PSX print here netted a high of 1,133% return, which is pretty awesome. That's an 11x return. Couple of these have already expired, but what you'll notice is the majority of the prints that are being shouted out here are actually quite long term. They're buying more than just a few months out, sometimes even leaps a year or two out in terms of these options. For the December prints, what we have here, we do have TSM at a 16x return, OKTA 560%, XBI 133, PRGO 155, Amazon 185%. There was one major miss in this one where it didn't really quite budge that much, but this one still does have quite some time. Apple still has a chance to recover over the course of this next year, so they still have about 8-ish months to go if you think about it. Tesla, small win, AA, very small win. What you may notice here is there's quite a big range of returns, but if you were able to get in on some of these, there's actually quite some profits to be had. In addition, what you'll see on the right side here, I've also updated when these high prints were. That way you get an idea of how many days it may take for those options to reach a high return, and those are calculated there for you. In January, we had couple more of these shorter term prints, but we do have some major hitters, NVIDIA and PLAY Play. I believe that one is Dave and Buster's. Oh, let me update here this color right here. The green, meaning that they were updated in the last 2 weeks or hit their high in the last 2 weeks as well. One major miss here, Tesla. But again, a small minor miss for that hasn't really quite recovered just yet, just so you know. In February, we had one put, a Tesla put here, which was a decent win, 40%. Everything else I do want to point out here, Pinterest and Shopify, you'll notice here have red W's with a cross out through them because while they did profit about 8% each, they were earnings plays and ultimately dropped quite significantly afterwards. I'll talk about how those numbers are calculated a little bit later as well. However, TSLL, Tesla, etc., 100% plus return. Nvidia here, 200%. SOXL, 127% return. MRVL, 126%. Again, here, Apple was one of the misses as well. I do also have this INTC Intel print, which did net and profit about a 12% return. However, we were, with the new update that we do have, this one would have been labeled as a sell of those calls, the $23 million in premium. And as of right now, this one's sitting at about $5 or so. So they have profited in terms of, I would put an asterisk next to this one for you to understand that they were actually playing the downside, even though it says calls here. That's what one of the big benefits of our update does, is it helps us label the buys and the sells, and STAX AI has a couple of different algorithmic tweaks to them that help us, be a little bit more accurate with what we're looking at. In addition, we do have March here. March, I would say right now has the most misses of all, but only 3 out of the total of 12 prints that we have here. There are a couple that are struggling a little bit right now, but the majority of them have been updated. And what you can see here is that, of course, being the newest prints through March, they haven't exactly, like I like to say, haven't had that much time to marinate so far. So there's also always still a good chance that these may recover over time. Basically, NEM was the big hitter of this March so far. But if you do go back and look at some of our previous back tests, a lot of these, the current month that we end up looking at generally tend to be a little bit lower until they've had time and update as the markets continue. With that being said, our overall hit rate, 66 out of 73. Keep in mind there's an asterisk next to that, where if we do want to count Shopify here and Pinterest as misses, that is just a little bit lower, I would say, bringing our total down for this month a little bit. But overall, around a 90% hit rate for October through March, with the highs averaging 127%. On average, it also takes 37, so over a month for these to hit their highs. I do want you to keep in mind the way that my spreadsheet is set up here and the way that it's calculated. It's actually counting the weekends as well, not just the market days, but the weekends too. So overall, you can see here, October 6 of 6, November 13 of 14, December 11 of 12, January 9 of 10. February, I've got this one in yellow because if you only count February's Apple miss, then it is 18 out of 19. But if you are to take out those 3, the Shopify and the Pinterest that I said, because those simply had an 8% return but then dropped significantly afterwards, then you're looking at 15 out of 19 for those, which is a 86.3% in terms of the hit rate for February. March right now is 9 out of 12, only 75%. But like I said, the month of, and giving it just about a month of time for it to marinate, they generally do not have as significant returns just yet. So give that a little bit more time. I do expect the numbers for March to creep up a little bit as time goes on. Like I said, the total hit rate for our previous interface of STAX AI, about a 90% hit rate with a high average of 127%, with 37 days average to those highs. If you do want to go through and calculate this and say, well, Eric, if I took out those extra 3 that you said were misses, Pinterest and Shopify, you're looking at an 86% hit rate, which is still pretty significant. All right. Now, what I want to make sure that we understand too is that on March 24th was when we released the new database and the new interface of STAX AI. where we were able to see the buys and the sells of all of these option prints that we're seeing above here. And as a result, there's a whole new set of data that I was able to go through, starting from all the way back in June and July. August, there's nothing for August and September. But for October and on, what you'll see is that we actually have some pretty significant returns for these. I do want you guys to take this with a little grain of salt, simply meaning that as these prints expire, they are actually wiped from our database. And so I was unable to go back and track those down just yet. But as we get newer prints, I'll be sure to add them in here so that we can see. What I do want to point out with our newer interface of STAX AI is the fact that we are getting quite a few more prints for February, for March, and right now for April. We are getting quite a bit more. When you look at the back test of the previous version, there was, probably anywhere from 10 to 20 in terms of the prints per month, generally around the 10 range. Now what we're looking at is around 20 to 30, and we'll keep an eye on these as time goes on for April and as the markets continue. Quick little back test here, just so you see NVIDIA when there was one major miss, LEGN. I do believe this one has been delisted now. You cannot find that print anymore. INVZ, which is also a similar one. This is the one that we did see in our previous version as well. So keep in mind our new database that we have gives us the buys and the sells of these options, but is a much more extensive database. So what we've done is filtered through all of that, made sure all the most important, most unusual, and big money options that we see are being shown. I will also point out that when you do see any prints that are in the tens of millions or anything actually above 5 million even, so what I wanted to point out is that they tend to be winners in our STAX AI interface. So if you take a look here, let me go ahead and green that one up for us as well. And this one down here. So NVIDIA, 6 million. 1100% return. TSM right here, $10 million, 1600% return. Microsoft, $10 million as well. This one's just 25%, but on a $10 million print, that's still 2.5 mil, if not more. Meta here, two pretty close to each other in a row, bought on the same day. What you'll notice here is Meta, the wins of this around 90 or 80% return, $63 million almost, and $18 million. Quite a big return when you consider those. They have till 2026. They still have some time for this to continue to grow. Meta, another one, couple of Meta here, if you'll notice, and they range anywhere from 60 to 65% return just as well. This guy needs to be highlighted. There we go. Quick little note here, all the ones that are in green on the right, meaning that they were updated within the last 2 weeks or so with a new high. APO, $12 million right here, only a 4.2% return, but keep in mind they have till 2026. So, I would expect this one to continue to go up quite a bit. And up here, AXP, 42% return. Mara right here, 11% return. NVIDIA up here as well, 8 and 16% return for those ones that are above $5 million. And here, NVIDIA as well, 10% so far. Our updates here as well, I do want to point out, we do have a few in April so far, but these ones so far have kind of just fluctuated. NVIDIA's a big win, but these couple ones that we have for April, a couple of them have already expired last week. Same with this SQQQ. So with that being said, what are some of the numbers or what are some of the hit rates that we have here? What you'll notice here is October or June, July, October, November, December. Only had a couple of these prints and ultimately a very low sample size for us to consider. There are some pretty high returns, but for example, this December one, the 1 out of 1, you'll notice December was the TSM print, which is at a 16x return. Keep in mind, take that with a grain of salt. But if you were to simply have purchased the options that these dark pool institutions are purchasing and focused on the ones that are above and ones that were above a certain premium, you'll be looking at some pretty awesome returns here. February and March, that's where the bulk of our newer prints are. You'll notice as well, those average returns tend to be a little bit lower, but we do have a much larger sample size for us to consider. So far, our overall hit rate through all of the data in this one happens to be at 86.7% return, 52 out of 60, with the highs averaging 108% return on those. On average, these take a little bit more. These take 51.93 days to the high. And do keep in mind, this is our newer database and group of information that we're getting for our dark pool prints. As time does go on, I'm going to do my best to keep you guys updated on any of these increases, or decreases as time goes on. I also do have the number of days to the highs still being calculated here. If you do have any questions with the way that things are being calculated or the sources and things like that, please let us know. For example, here I will point out when I first did the back test for March, so all the prints of March through the 19th and the 20th, it was only 11 out of 22, but as time has gone on, we've had more of these start to hit and go higher and higher. For example, one of the big ones here was Dell here now at 122% return after it dropped just a little bit. Well, hope that was helpful for you guys. Again, I'll be doing these back tests on a monthly basis, hoping that as time goes on, I'll be able to give you guys a much more accurate view of what's going on in our March and our April prints. If you have any questions, please send them over to help@investorcentralclub.com. Again, this is Eric here signing out. I'll see you guys in the next one.